This recording concerns a query to the VAMDC data system. As an example, I will search for molecular spectroscopy of carbon monoxide. Along the way, I will outline how the various data resources, the VAMDC partners, are connected to the system, and I will touch on how this technical structure affects the management and constitution of the VAMDC consortium. I start at the VAMDC web portal, which is the most general interface for the query and also the normal first point of contact with the system for new users. It's a goal of VAMDC that one be able to query the system without first learning the details of the data or how it works. So I could, from this interface, go to the list of databases and read up on the science background of each one and how to use them. But I don't need to do that. Instead, I can go directly to the query form. From this query page, I can phrase a query to all of VAMDC as a unit. So the query will be sent to all the relevant databases. The list of databases it could be sent to is in this column on the right here. And as I start to enter the query constraints, certain of these databases will light up in green to show that they're relevant to the query I'm putting together. Now, one might ask, how does the portal know about these databases? How are they connected? Does this portal have a private copy of all these data? In fact, no. VAMDC does not own the data, and the portal does not maintain a private copy, nor does any other part of VAMDC maintain a centralized copy. What we do have is a central registry of the metadata for these databases. And this is a concept that we inherited from the International Virtual Observatory Alliance. This is the admin interface for the metadata registry. We can see that this table describing the contents of the registry lists the various services. This one, as an example, is for the Cologne database of molecular spectroscopy. Looking into this, we can see that the registration starts off with human readable details of who actually owns this database, who is the contact person, what are the fields of endeavour to which it's relevant, and some general description of what's inside the database. If we scroll down and look at the detail of the registration, we find all that laid out in a standard form, but also quite a large body of machine-readable detail to inform the portal or other user interface about how to drive the database. In particular, if we look into this, we find that buried in this mess of technical detail, there's a URL for getting to that database. And this gives the clue as to how the system is put together. In fact, quite opposite to having a central database, we actually turn every database into a little specialized website called the data node. And then the science application, which in this case is our web portal, will talk to all these data nodes on behalf of the user. At this point, it's important to note that one can understand how VAMDC is arranged and managed by seeing this technical structure, but the actual end user, the person making the query, doesn't actually need to know the structure at all to actually operate the system. Going back to our query portal page, we decided as an example to use a query on carbon monoxide, so we'll select by species. We could also select by the physical processes, radiative collision details, collisional details, or by the environment in which these species are found. But for now, we'll just select a molecule. The system allows us to select it by name, by its formula, or if we have a record of it somewhere, by its standard international chemical identifier. I'm going to use the formula. So I type in CO, At this point, the database inside the portal of names, specialized internal database of names, offers to complete the formula for me, which in the case of a long formula might be quite convenient. Essentially, it's matched that formula against a list of known molecules. For now, it's an easy one. I'll just take carbon monoxide, thank you. Now we see that the interface has updated slightly in response to this initial selection. On the right, the list of databases, some of them are highlighted in green, and these are the ones that the portal knows are relevant to the query in hand. These are the ones which can actually return some data for this query. On the left, the portal interface is now asking me which isotopolog of carbon monoxide am I interested in. I could select all of them, or I could say none of them, just give me anything that matches the formula. What I'm going to do is select the isotopolog containing the most common isotopes, carbon-12 and oxygen-16. So I select that with a checkbox there. I now have the query complete and I can send it. I send it with this button. Now the query is being executed and we can see the various data nodes responding in the table at the bottom of this page. The query is fairly quick. Most of them have come back already, one to go. We can see that we're getting responses from a variety of different databases. Each row is one database, and that the initial response tabulates the number of species involved and the number of processes, the collisions, the radiative transitions, etc., so that the user gets some idea of how much data is being offered here. In fact, I think we have enough results there, so we don't need to wait for the 20-second return. Now, the following demonstrations will illustrate how we browse, and how we download, and how we exploit the data found in this query. For now, it's just sufficient to note that using a simple query to VAMDC as a whole, we've actually obtained results from several databases. We might further reflect that VAMDC is a growing system and ask the question, how would a new data provider actually add their data to this system? Well, the normal answer is that they would make their database into one of these data nodes, into the specialized kind of website that supports VAMDC. To do so, they would have to make that website conform to the VAMDC technical standards, of which the core concerns the interaction of an application with a data node. So that would mean that it would have to respond to the standard query language, VSS2. It would have to use query terms drawn from the VAMDC standard dictionary. The data results sent back would be in a standard format, and the overall arrangement of the website, the set of URLs within that site, would have to follow the VAMDC pattern. Now, clearly, because the application is an automaton, we require that the website follow these standards very closely, but equally we want to make it easy, very easy, for new sites to join VAMDC, and we don't expect that the operators of each site will be expert web programmers. Therefore, we provide the software to actually implement these data nodes as a free package. A data node consists in the database itself, the core scientific value, the web server, and the node software that runs in the web server to actually make the specialized site. The core of the node software is common to all data nodes, and VAMDC provides this for free. To build a data node, the operator has to provide a small customization to that code to suit it to their particular database. All the other software required to operate the system at the node is usually obtained with the operating system on which the node runs. This software is downloadable from the VAMDC central website, but it's also available from the GitHub site. The node software is free software, open source software under the GNU public license, and the code is freely available for potential node operators to read for their own information, and they can also store their customizations on GitHub along with the common part of the code. So this branch of the code tree contains all the specializations to particular nodes that have been entered so far. You'll see there's quite a few. In fact, almost every one of these nodes has actually been derived from an earlier existing node which contains a similar sort of data. So in fact, the process of making a new node is quite simple if you start from an existing node and just customize very lightly. And VAMDC will provide working examples of nodes with data samples to prospective new members. For any prospective node owners and operators who do get stuck in the technical building process, support VAMDC provides detailed technical support, up to and including sending somebody to their site to help them, and this will also remain a role of the VAMDC consortium after the end of the support VAMDC project. So we've seen how the query works, and we've seen something of the underlying structure. Finally, we can reflect that under the terms of the draft Memorandum of Understanding for the VAMDC consortium, the condition for joining as a full member is to provide a resource, which is usually a data node. Therefore, a prospective new member, as part of their joining process, would actually make a data node using the free software that I just demonstrated on GitHub, would set it up, get it working, and offer it for testing, assessment and registration to the consortium. And when it becomes registered and accepted, then that site, that organisation, is then free to join the consortium.